All righty. Happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have an old friend, an absolute powerhouse with us. We cannot wait to hear from him and pick his brain. But first, my name is Andrew Whipp, and I'm the lead creative and editor at Greenbuzz Agency. And I'm also joined today by Todd Plotkin, the CEO and founder of Greenbuzz Agency, and Amelia Oliver, our marketing strategist. How are you both doing?
I am doing fantastic. Amelia, how are you?
Also doing really well. Happy to be here with you all.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting one. A lot of data involved, which I know is a hot button thing that always pops up when we're talking about video production and how to integrate data. So I'm really looking forward to this. But as a quick aside, if any of our audience members ended up here and don't know who we are or what we do, Greenbuzz Agency is a full-service video production company. We're based out of Old Town Alexandria, and we specialize in documentary, motion graphics, and branded content. So if you or your teams are curious about the process of making a video or are looking to tell your own story, don't hesitate to reach out. But bringing it back around, today's webinar is the 16th. Wow, I can't believe we're that far in. It's the 16th in our Greenbuzz Agency webinar series, which was created to connect our community with thought leaders who can help us break down top-line strategy, best practices, and advice during the pandemic. And if you'd like to check out any of our previous episodes, don't hesitate to reach out and visit greenbuzzagency.com/blogs. There you'll be able to see all of the on-demand recordings of our episodes, which include strategies and ideas from executives at Twitter and Quibi and PBS and Sotheby's and so many more great organizations. Today, we'll be focusing on data that fuels storytelling and creative decision-making. So if you're looking to learn about data behind storytelling on social, then you are in the right place. So it is finally time for our panelist introduction. Today, we are joined by the one and only TJ Cooney. TJ is a video producer at AARP and a YouTube creator. At AARP, TJ has produced several documentary shorts, including a D-Day series narrated by Bryan Cranston. His YouTube channel, I Need More Space, has grown to an audience of over 80,000 subscribers and over 8 million channel views. TJ, thank you for swinging by today. Thank you for sharing your insights and your experiences with us as you've taken the journey on YouTube. I'm really looking forward to getting into the weeds with you, so I will pass it on over.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrew, and everybody. I'm really excited to be here today. As they said, I'm a bit of a unique animal where I am an independent content creator, but I've also created content for large organizations for many years. And my primary specialty and passion is on YouTube. So I'm going to show you a lot of data here. Unfortunately, no videos, but quite honestly, before you make a single video on YouTube and you're going to invest a lot of money in that particular video or in that content strategy, you really want to get the data right, because there is a lot of answers out there that if you can understand how to read that, you're going to make much smarter content decisions. So we're going to first start with how to use your analytics to make better creative content decisions. First, before you even make any type of content, the big picture thing to think about is what kind of channel are you going to create? Like, who do you want to talk to? What type of content do you want to make? And when I say what type, there's lots of different types of content. There's profile pieces, the story, human interest type content. You have your utilitarian/service journalism type content where it's how-to videos. And those seem to be the very two type of verticals that you see very consistently on YouTube. If you can pick whichever vertical you're going to fall under, it's going to make your content decisions much easier. The one thing I did also want to point out here was this beautiful triangle that goes around the internet every so often, the hero, hub, and help triangle. Ignore this. This is a trap for anybody out there who's trying to make it on YouTube. The overall strategy with this, the initial idea with this is you have one YouTube channel and you have your low cost, high reward content as the help content, which is really focused on search driven content. Then you'd have your hub content, which was a little bit higher production value, costs a little bit more money to make, that you didn't put out as often, but that was really driven around building up browse and suggested views. And then at the very top, you have your hero content, which is that big swing content. You put your most money around that. The problem with this is that when you end up going down this path, you end up fundamentally making three very distinct different types of content. And when you're down that rabbit hole, your audience doesn't really build relationship with the channel that you're looking for, because you're trying to be both the Food Network and MTV at the same time. You're trying to take on two different types of content streams that really should be on their own channels. So I'll elaborate on this further, but this is something that y'all may have seen. And as of the way that YouTube worked in 2020, this is not a direction that we recommend in terms of audience development perspective. It's not the direction that we recommend people going down. So before you want to really invest a lot of money on YouTube, it's really important to understand how the algorithm works. Today, we're going to ignore view counts. The real secret on the algorithm is percentages. There's a white paper that I highly recommend every single person read that Google put out in 2016. It's very high level, but what it is it's a fundamental explanation of how the YouTube algorithm works. And it's what's called a neural net. There's no actual person behind the scenes pulling levers and deciding what videos to suggest to you as a viewer. It's constantly changing and constantly reevaluating how to suggest content to viewers. But what we do know is what it looks for right now in terms of evaluating if a video is worth suggesting. And that's what we have here on the right side. We have click-through rate, which is the number of times someone clicks on your video over the impressions. So it's just a percentage of people that click on your video, and essentially the higher the click-through rate, that means that you are creating a thumbnail and a title that makes people want to learn more. The next thing we have here is average percentage viewed, and that's very self-explanatory. It's the average amount of time people are watching this piece of content. And the final bullet here is watch time, which is the general overall amount of time people are watching your content. And when you really think about it, it's actually pretty simple. You're really thinking about, am I making a title and a thumbnail that makes people want to watch it? And is the content I'm making keeping people around long enough to want to watch this? And if you're telling the algorithm that my content is something people want to watch and they're hanging around and watching it, it's going to get what I like to say is free money. It's going to get promoted in the sidebar and suggested and on the homepage in the browse features. So what I have here is the world I live in a lot. It's a table essentially in the back end of YouTube. What we're looking at here is a video that is a high performer on YouTube that is in the total of millions of views now. What we're looking at is just a snapshot in time of it in I believe the last 90 days. So this is what I would consider a video that we would say is high performing. Yeah, you see the view vertical has 220,000 views in the last 90 days. It's pretty cool. That's a lot of views, but why? Why does it have that many views? There's not a single penny going behind promoting this content. One of the things you'll want to look for is on the very right side is that impressions click-through rate I talked about. It's at 5.7%, which in a YouTube world, that's actually a very good click-through rate. Over 5% of people that are exposed to the title and thumbnail want to click it. You'll see also in the middle, we'll have average view duration. One thing I neglected to put on here, but it will come in a future slide in this table, it says 2 minutes, 7 seconds, which in an ether doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but the average percentage viewed on this video is in the low 60s, which is also very good. We try to really aim to have videos with an average view percentage of over 50%. Statistically speaking, this is constantly telling the algorithm that the video content you made, people like watching once they get there. But the magic correlation here is making a title and thumbnail that makes the algorithm suggest the video to people, but then also is worth clicking on. So if you have a video with a very high click-through rate, but a very low average view duration, what that's probably telling you is that it's the right topic. Your title and your thumbnail are on point, but there's something wrong with the video. Something has to change with that video. We have here also is what's called this inverted triangle that you'll see also in the back end of YouTube. And this is something that is a really great snapshot of understanding what this video is doing in terms of the algorithm. You'll see this purple bar on the very top. The further to the right you can get that purple bar, the more your video is optimized for the YouTube algorithm. If that purple bar is way to the left, something has to change. So this video had 2.1 million views. It has a 5.7% click-through rate, all these great metrics. But I just really wanted to highlight this inverted triangle because when you're poking through YouTube Studio, this is a really great way to get a general snapshot of understanding if this particular piece of content is working. Now we're at this average percentage viewed point I was telling you all about. This line chart is pure black magic. I love it. It's one of those places that I get completely lost in sometimes. This is your average audience retention chart. It will always go down. Not every single person in the world is going to watch your video to completion. What you'll see with this chart here, though, is it's a very gradual move down, which tells you that there's no distinct hard point, obviously, from this particular video that people are jumping off on. But what if we compared it to other videos of its similar kind? And that's this relative audience retention chart that I have here. And what this does is it takes your audience retention at the top and then compares it to other videos that have a similar runtime. And it tries to show you where are people dropping off in your content. And that lets you kind of focus in on where you might want to make a creative change in your content moving forward. So on the very left, you'll see that the chart actually goes up. It starts at a little bit of an average because the click-through rate was high, and then it goes up even higher. It's retaining people more than typical, which tells you that the open of the video is very good. This is an open that is capturing someone's attention, and you're encouraging them to let me hang around for another minute or so and see if this is worth my while. And it's pretty flat, pretty flat, pretty flat. Then we have another moment in the piece where it goes up again, another about a 5%. That's great. That's the higher we can go here, the more we're doing right with our story. But then it starts to drop. And this is a point in the piece in which we have made a creative change that is telling the audience, nah, I'm not really into this anymore. I'm going to go find another video. So this is one of the first places I would look at this piece of content. I would literally go to that timestamp, which looks to be around the 2-minute mark. What did we do in this video that changed in the story? Is this something that people generally don't want to learn more about? If not, then going forward, as we're in the edit or as we're in development of the piece, we will avoid that. But also, we'll look at where it's increasing and we'll try to double down on what people are really interested in. And then naturally towards the end here, and this is very typical, it really starts dropping. And that's probably because the video has now resolved and we're having some time of reflection or something, and people don't really want to watch that all the time. This is one of the reasons why at the end of a video, you'll see these end slates where people have their call to subscribe. Here's a video suggest and stuff. YouTube lets you leave overlays up for 30 seconds. That is not something that I would recommend. You want that end slate being up as short as possible, just long enough for people to make a decision, which we try to aim for between 8 to 10 seconds. Because the longer that end card is up when people are just dropping off, you're reducing your average percentage viewed. And by doing that, you're just kind of shooting yourself in the foot. So that's another creative decision where, when you want to put these end cards on the video, yes, that is a very important part of YouTube to get people to continue watching your content, but don't leave it up forever. It's only reducing your average watch time, which is then telling the algorithm, maybe this is not a video I want to continue recommending to people. So what we have next here, I picked another video in a similar time frame that is underperforming. And, why am I considering this underperforming? Because you could have a video that is overperforming, like the previous one, and you have one that's underperforming, and then you can have one that's not performing. We're not going to show you one that's not performing, but this is a video that has promise, but there are some problems with it that I can change without actually changing the video. So we'll look here, the views, sure, the views are not very high on it, but that's not really where I'm looking at. I'm looking at that click-through rate all the way on the right, 1.5%. That is 1 in 100 people decide to click on this video. I really want to get that higher. You'll also look at the type of traffic sources that are on this chart. The number one traffic source is external. So the number one traffic source on this video is not even being driven by YouTube. That is also a big uh-oh. What you really want to do is, on the previous video, I'll actually go back really quick. If you look at this chart, the top 2 traffic sources on this video were browse and suggested. Browse is when you go to youtube.com and there's that wall of videos that is shown to you, and that's based off of your viewing habits. That's browse. That is purely the algorithm saying, hey, I looked at everything that you're watching. Here's some content I recommend you viewing. You want to win that browse lottery. You want to get as many of your views from browse. The second most important traffic source is suggested. And that is all either autoplay after a video is finished watching, and YouTube will at times autoplay another video. That is a suggested video by the YouTube algorithm. So you want to get those. And then also in the sidebar, which is a substantial traffic driver. So when you look at your click-through rate, you really want to figure out, based off of what I said previously, what type of content are you creating, and then double down on that type of content's click-through rate metric. So the type of piece that we're looking at here is what I call a profile piece. It's a human interest story. So people aren't really looking up this very niche type of subject matter. So you'll see that YouTube search on this one is very low traffic driver. But the browse and suggested are very high because the algorithm knows that there are viewers out there who like this type of content. So we'll go back to our underperforming piece of content here. Now that you have that context, you'll see that the external is the #1 traffic driver. So that means a third-party website is driving the traffic here. And our suggested videos is actually at 5%. Not bad. YouTube search is at 2.2%, and then browse is at 1.5. So when I look at all of this, what this tells me is we need to do better in our impression click-through rate metric. If we can increase that, we're going to increase our impressions, which therefore should increase our views. So what I would recommend doing is going back, reworking the title and thumbnail based off what we know from other titles and thumbnails that work, and see if that happens. But what also click-through rate tells you is that this is a topic that people care about. We may have made a video here that people just don't want to watch. It could be the best title and thumbnail out there, but if it's of a topic that nobody really cares about, then newsflash, stop making those types of videos. So you'll see our inverted triangle here. Our purple line is all the way to the left. That is a place that, as I said earlier, is not a place that you want to be. There's really all that to it. The views from impressions is very low, and our click-through rate is very low. So why did I consider this underperforming? Well, that's because the average view duration on this is pretty high, 57%. What this tells you is, although not many people got there, the people that did get there really liked this video. And there's actually some more data here in the relative audience retention chart that tells me even more that the people were dropping off sooner than in that previous video. So if I'm looking at my creative, I want to go back to that point and see if I can want to do something like that again, whether it's pivot the story, add motion graphics, change a music cue or something. That's a place to look. So this is a video that could potentially have a better life on YouTube, but it just needs that extra TLC to reposition it. And one of the ways you can reposition it, yes, with a title and description, but then also get it back out there, promote it through organic means, through other social media channels, add it to cards and other videos, put it out in a community post on YouTube, just to get it more impressions, to see if viewers can get a second look on this piece of content. So here's some best practices that I recommend for everybody, regardless of size. I know that our viewers here are probably dealing with channels small and large, but these are types of things that I recommend to everybody. First is write the title of your video before you make the video. Like, really dial it in, because you want to make sure you fulfill the promise of that title. If you go out and you shoot a video and you're starting to make it and you find to edit the video and post, okay, that's fine, but you could be setting yourself up for failure. So really workshop your title with people that you trust and make sure that it's something that people really want to care about. Ideally under 70 characters, and ideally having some kind of action or intrigue in it. You want to collaborate with similar sized channels in your niche. On the right there, you'll see I have niche down. Double down on a niche on YouTube. There are YouTube content creators out there who have millions and millions of subscribers because they are really good at one thing, and that's what they're known for. It's very hard to be a channel that builds a loyal audience with a very wide general viewership. If you go and look at a lot of large news publications, they may have very large subscriber bases, but their per video views could be really low. One that jumps out to mind, the Washington Post has millions of subscribers, but their videos only get tens of thousands of views. And that's because people are subscribing to the Washington Post because they want news, but they may not want to watch everything that they put out. So that means that they're not really mobilizing on their subscriber base to a point that is getting them the more views. So they're very much forced in that aspect to make more content. On the bottom left here, a good way to get organic viewership, I always recommend pitching your content to websites. Offer them an exclusive to it. They can embed the video on a page, and you're going to immediately get viewership in a niche that you really want to communicate with. And then the last thing is just to be honest with yourself. Look at the data, look at the click-through rate, look at the average view duration. Are people wanting to watch this content? If not, then stop making it. Make it pivot, and don't be afraid to change. So I know I went through a whole lot of stuff, and actually much faster than I was expecting. I guess I'm too fast of a talker here, so I'm happy to elaborate on things. But the very best YouTube content creators out there are using data to influence what their creative decisions are. A YouTube network now at this point that I highly recommend people looking at is called Linus Media Group. Now they're a tech YouTube channel, but that's not really the point that I want people looking at. You'll notice that if you look at the history of that channel or that group, they started out with one channel and they realized that they were hitting walls when they would just put up like a DIY video and then they would put up an adventure video. They were kind of splitting their audience. So then they started breaking up their YouTube channel into multiple channels that did these different specific verticals. And they went from getting millions of views a month to hundreds of millions of views a month. Now they're a bit of an outlier because they were able to make a lot of content. Not everybody can do that. But if you can't make a lot of content, then focus on what the type of content that you think is going to be your best performer. Because if you try to do everything in one place, you're going to break up your viewership and they won't really know what to expect of you. And that leads into this next point. You want to develop a consistent cadence, whether that's one video a week, one video a month. You want to stay top of mind with your subscribers, because if they kind of forget about you and you appear months later and it's not that one video that they were really hoping you would make, you're much more likely to have them unsubscribe from you. So what you want to do is you want to develop a consistent type of content with a consistent cadence so you can build a relationship with your subscribers. And you can build a relationship with subscribers without having people on screen. There's a fantastic, I think they're called Kurjazad. I can't remember their name, but they're a German-based YouTube channel where they do educational explainers, and it's all motion graphics. And they really only put out, they usually put out one video a month, but now they're putting out a little bit more. But they built a relationship with their audience because audiences knew what to expect of them, and they understood the personality that that channel was. The third bullet that follows up these other ones is if you have made a video that you don't think is up to par with the other content you have made, it's usually actually not worth posting it. If it falls flat in terms of the promise that you made in the title, if it is not of the production level that you're looking for, or it's just what you consider not a very good video, you're better off not putting it up. And there's a good reason for that. YouTube looks at your historic post history and will take that into consideration if how many people I should send this out to. I've had videos that have gotten on the trending tab, which is a whole other conversation, but the trending tab is a scary place because yes, you get a ton of impressions and YouTube is like, okay, this video is worthwhile to share to a much wider audience, which also did all the impressions kill your click-through rate. But it sets a very high expectation for you. Your next video better be that good. But that's an extreme. If you have a video that gets, say, 100,000 views in a week, that means that the algorithm really ran with it and sent it out to a lot of people. But then you put up a video that is nowhere near as good as that one, and the algorithm sees that you're not getting the click-through rate you were getting on the previous video, you're not getting the average view duration you're getting on that previous video, and it will treat that new video very similarly to that first one because it assumes that you're making content that people want to watch. So when you want to put a piece of content after that underperforming video, your impressions and exposure by the algorithm is going to drop significantly. So you want to really continue to try swinging for the fences, because if you don't, you're just going to be shooting yourself in the foot and not taking advantage of everything that the algorithm has to offer. So the next point, don't be afraid to pivot. If what you're doing isn't working, figure out through the data what is working, what is resonating with people, and double down on that. If your top traffic source is search, look at the search terms. What are the search terms people are finding you under? And then look at the competition within that search term and figure out a way to be the best in that search term if you want to be there. If people are not finding you in search, but they're finding you through browse and discovery, look at the other content that is recommending your content and consider doubling down on that type of content. There are hundreds of millions of views out there that we can all grab per day, but it's about positioning yourself to be in a place that people want to watch your content the most. And the final point, which I see a lot happening, especially in a lot of marketing agencies, is one of the first things people want to talk about is the paid strategy with videos on YouTube. And I hate to break it to you, but you can't pay for a loyal fan base. Paying for views is not a good strategy in building a long-term audience relationship. Now, paying for views on YouTube, whether it's through TrueView for Action, they definitely have their place for increasing brand awareness or pushing people to other websites. But especially using TrueView ads, you're not going to get people to convert to actually want to watch more of your content. That's just not the tool for you. Discovery ads, those are going to be the sidebar ads, or you'll see them on homepage sometimes. Those are a better paid place, but you're better off taking however many thousands of dollars you're paying to promote the content and spend that money making content. You're going to, in the long run, get way more views and way more positive interactions with your brand if people are coming across your content organically and you're making content that they actually want to watch in their free time. If you're forcing people to watch your content, you're not building the type of relationship you want on YouTube. So I think that's it. I know I ran through a lot of things here, but I knew I wanted to keep this kind of general, but feel free to send off any questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, TJ. I think there's an absolute mountain of stuff I'd love to get to, but we do have our first audience question. It's from Caitlin Rossman. And Caitlin asks, you have had tremendous success producing high-performing content on YouTube, both personally and professionally. Would you speak about a specific time where you use data-driven insights from a video to tweak your content creation approach?
Yes, there's many. I'll talk about it on a personal basis really quickly because I don't want to let out too much information about the kind folks at ARP. But on my personal channel, I do make a lot of space storytelling content. And something I noticed through search is I was getting a lot of traffic with anything with Elon Musk or SpaceX. Yeah, people were watching my content at a very high level in terms of average view duration that didn't involve them, but my impressions were nowhere near anything that involved SpaceX or Elon Musk. So what I tried to do in future content was take that into consideration, where if I can find an angle on a video that includes him or that company, I'm much more likely to get a higher level of exposure. So when I started doing that, the views on videos literally would skyrocket from averaging 10,000 views per video to like 100,000 views per video. And that doesn't mean I needed to necessarily change the complete different creative, but it would be some way to introduce them into the story so that it made people want to watch. Now, that's because that's my type of content that I'm creating, but you can apply that to several different types of creative. There's also, I've probably made thousands of thumbnails in my career, tens of thousands. And I've learned inherently that faces always outperform things or places. If you can find ways to incorporate a human face into a thumbnail, and I'm talking like a tight shot, you're going to see your click-through rate go up much higher than any other type of thumbnail. And the only real way you can do that, find that out, is by creating analytics groups in the YouTube backend. I recommend creating as many groups as you can, divide the videos up by runtime, divide them up by style, divide them up by subject matter, right? And when you do that, you're starting to start really clearing things out in terms of what verticals are people resonating the most with. That's a very specific example, but you could take that example and spread that out amongst any other type of niche out there, and you'll find winners.
Cool. Hey, TJ, this is Todd. So question I had was, looking back on maybe the most successful videos you've ever done on a personal level. I'm sure you've done a breakdown, you've done an analysis. I mean, you just did a great job of explaining sort of trends you saw that would really boost up a video. But the all-time highest performing videos, when you've analyzed them, why do you think they did so well? Why do you think they kind of stuck out from the crowd of content that you've created before?
So on a personal level, the news cycle is a thing. It's a real thing. My content on my personal channel can sometimes align with moments in time that everybody cares about. And I think that that's very important to be timely. For AARP, if you look at our YouTube channel, some of our most top performing videos out there are military or veteran based content. And that's not by surprise, or that's not by chance. We strategically over the years knew that it's content that people really like to eat up. So we've always made it a goal for Veterans Day and Memorial Day every year to put out a video of a person that we think people really want to hear about their life and hear about the story. So we made sure the very first one was a video in 2015, which I think now is like 10 or 11 million views or something. And that was a Memorial or Veterans Day video. I can't remember which one. But essentially, we tried to time up a really intriguing story with a moment in time in which people were cared about that topic. And when you do that, it's actually going to help the long-term performance of your video, because if you are presenting a type of video that is top of mind for the general public, you're going to get a very high click-through rate and average view duration, and which tells the algorithm, hey, I should feed this video out further beyond this moment in time, because the algorithm's not looking at the calendar and being like, oh, it's Christmas. It doesn't care about that. I mean, maybe it does, it will eventually get there, but we're not there yet. So if you can position your content with moments in time, if people really care about that topic, that's a really great way to do that. Or position your content when that style of content is very much trending right now, whether it's a React style video, whether it's a music video or something. If you have your message, whatever your message is that you want to get out there, there's nothing wrong with getting on a trend that is within your niche. So those are some of the other strategies we've taken into account when you want to get that number one video. It's usually the perfect storm of the perfect timing. You nailed the subject matter that people want to hear from at that point in time. And also it's just a good video. There are people out there who are amazing video producers, video directors, and the content they make is breathtaking. But one of the things that is sad to see is that, at least on YouTube in 2020, not everybody knows how to position that piece of content properly. If you make a beautiful video that really anybody who watches it will enjoy, but you don't position it properly, people aren't going to watch it. So it's really comes back to that bigger picture strategy of nailing the timing and the positioning of this piece of content and then fulfilling on that promise.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's super high level and such a good strategy. I have a question that's much more specific about thumbnails, because I think that's something that we think about at GreenBuzz a lot. And do you have any advice as to what text should be on a thumbnail versus the title of a specific video?
Yeah, text on a thumbnail is tricky. Usually text on a thumbnail should be at most a phrase or one word, because people, when they're looking, if you think about human psychology, when you show people a wall of information and a third of that information is photos or pictures, people are going to look at that first than the text. And the same thing goes for within a thumbnail. So you want to fill your thumbnail with as little text as possible, but with as much content that evokes some level of emotion. So nothing evokes emotion better from human beings than other human beings. So that is usually the first thing that I recommend. The other good best practice with thumbnails that is not necessarily text, but it's arrows and circles, man. I don't know why, but if you put an arrow or in a circle on a thumbnail, it makes people like lean in and want to see what you're pointing at, and then makes them want to click on that video. So the typical magical combination is a human being doing something or reacting to something that invokes the viewer to have an emotion, and then on the opposite side of that thumbnail, directing them towards that thing that they are reacting to. So your thumbnail should tell a story already, should tell the story of the video, but clearly in a much more focused way. And it's also not a bad thing to even give up like the spoiler of the video in the thumbnail, because people aren't going to look at a thumbnail and be like, oh, I saw the story, I'm not going to click it. Like, it makes them want to learn more. So use that opportunity to really tease what is really exciting about that. But in terms of text, we're not robots, we're people. And at the very, very most, we want to keep it to a phrase of 2 to 3 words or one word at best. If you're going to do something that's branded, like if you have a series that you're continually doing within your bigger content strategy vertical, having, you know, that series part of the thumbnail, I think is a good idea, as long as the viewer is expecting that and understands what that content is about.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned the arrows and the circles, because I feel like I fall victim to that all the time on YouTube myself. There's a golf channel I like to check out every now and again, and they're always putting little arrows over to things. I'm like, I wonder what that is. I have to click it and find out. And I remember even back when we were at Discovery, TJ, there was so much emphasis and effort put into thumbnail creation, and there was pages and pages of rules and ideas as to how to get the most out of a thumbnail. So it's definitely a really, really important component of marketing the overall video and helping improve that click-through rate, like you were talking about. I had a question about, what is the most common misunderstanding when brands or organizations are starting a YouTube channel? And the reason I mention this is because I feel like often in my career, I've talked to people or worked with organizations who they put out a video on their YouTube once every few months, and then they want to ask how they can make it viral or how they can have its click-through rates increased or its impressions increased. And I mean, one thing I've always talked about with them is stuff that you've mentioned today, which is like a consistent kind of voice, consistent posting, none of which these kind of brands or organizations usually have. So for you in your career thus far, what have you noticed has been one of the biggest misunderstandings when brands or organizations try and start a YouTube channel or are expecting immediate success on a YouTube channel?
That's something that happens all the time. And so the very first thing I would say is if you have a YouTube channel that you're not posting to that often, you're not going to build that owned audience, that subscriber base. So what you really need to lean on is if you have, let's just say you're going to make this one amazing piece of content every year, right? But because you're doing that, you're not encouraging people to subscribe, because people subscribe because they want to continue seeing your content. But if you don't continually make content, there's no incentive there. So really your only option out the gate is to get third-party promotion in some way. When I say that, I'm talking about articles written about it. I'm talking about sharing it on Reddit. I'm talking about social media, people talking about it there. But when you go that route, YouTube in of itself is an uphill battle always, but that's like a mountain battle. Because at that point, your real goal at that moment is to build watch time. Build up some level of data that is telling the algorithm, maybe I should seed this out to people. Maybe I should broaden the amount of people that see this content to see if they really want to watch it. But if you put out a video and don't promote it anywhere and you just think that YouTube is going to pick it up, it's not going to happen. For every one video that makes its rounds, there's literally 100,000 that don't. And the 100,000 that don't are videos that weren't positioned properly or executed properly. So assuming that the piece of content that you're making is something that people, in their free time, are going to want to watch, that's not an ad. It's something that is actually an entertaining and educational or entertaining and inspiring or service type of content, we'll assume that that's great. Then you need to build up your data in some other way, and that's through outside resources. Because then once you start doing that, you're then incentivizing the algorithm to try to feed it out. The algorithm within the first 48 hours, 24 hours to 48 hours of a publishing will put your content out initially to a group of people that it thinks it will work. And if that group of people doesn't work, it will try again 24 to 48 hours later. If that second group of people doesn't work, it will stop. So one of the things that you can also do from like a algorithmic point of view is fill your video with as much metadata as humanly possible. I'm talking caption files. I'm talking literally fill up every character in the description that you can, which is a lot, but making sure that you're giving the algorithm every type of data point you can so it can make better guesses or decisions on how to push your content out. That's also another thing. It's sad when you see a video out there that really deserves a wider audience, but the title is like 4 words and the description is 1 sentence and doesn't have a caption file. Like those are the layups right there of let's optimize those and get those in the right place so that the algorithm actually knows what it's looking at. Because the algorithm will look at the auto-generated caption file, but it values a human uploaded caption file more than the auto-generated caption file.
That's very detailed and very insightful. We've been talking about YouTube and really looking at it very specifically. I'm curious about looking at it in comparison to other platforms. And when you think about YouTube and you think about some of the other places that you can place your content, whether that be Facebook, Instagram, or wherever you might do it, what stands out to you about the platform? Where do you think the biggest differences are from some of the other platforms that are out there?
Sure. As we know, YouTube is the top video platform on the planet, but coming up very close second is Facebook. And Facebook actually, the viewer expectations are similar, but the way you position them are different. So I've been hammering here click-through rate and average view duration. Like, oh my God, TJ, be quiet about that. But on Facebook, it's actually not much different. On Facebook, it still very much cares about average view duration and how long viewers are watching. But it's the way it looks at if people are interested in it is not through the title and the thumbnail. It's really in that open. It's figuring out what is that thumb stopper moment in the video that makes people want to watch more. And that's usually in that first 3 or 4 seconds of the piece. So you use that first 3 or 4 seconds of the piece really as the title and thumbnail for Facebook. You're setting up why should you stop scrolling and look at this piece of content, right? Because fundamentally, after that point, after you've stopped them and you've gotten their attention, it's the same mental mindset. So always a lot of conversation on Facebook around runtime and things of that nature. There's almost no data point now that will say shorter videos are better on Facebook. Even Facebook last year put out a blog post saying that they encourage creators to make at least 3-minute long videos because they've come to realize that the way they value quality content is how long people are watching. That's one of the best ways to evaluate if it's worth watching. So if you make an amazing video that goes nuts on YouTube, it should also probably go nuts on Facebook, but the way you position it needs to be completely different. So the aspect ratio is something to consider. I am personally a big fan of the square aspect ratio, mainly because when you make a vertical video on Facebook, yeah, people can watch a full screen on their phone, but it chops off the top and bottom of the video on the feed. So you could make this beautifully composed shot, and then it goes in people's feeds, and you can see the person's mouth and their neck, but you can't see their shirt and their eyes, you know? So I'm a big fan of the square aspect ratio, and I'm a big fan of creating that first 3 to 4 seconds that makes people really care about this topic. And if people live through that first 3 to 4 seconds, even shorter sometimes, 1 or 2 seconds, and they don't think it's worthwhile, then it's not really a reflection on the creative. It's not really a reflection on the full video. It's a reflection on, is this video something people really want to stop and learn more about, or did we not do a very good job setting it up? So something I highly recommend is creating, maybe take that same video, whether it's a 3-minute video or whatever, but make 2 or 3 different opens for it. And over a period of time, release those out and see which open garnered the highest average view duration on that video. And then continue tweaking that open so that it breaks out more and more. And then also, good best practice with Facebook is, if you're going to burn in captions, please do that, but also include a caption file with the video, because that's also telling the Facebook algorithm, very similar to what YouTube is, what other kinds of content it should recommend. But caption files are huge, because Facebook largely is still a sound off experience. So a lot of people on the go are in places where they really don't have an opportunity to listen. So making sure that that is something that the viewer has an opportunity to experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also just keeping in mind that people are seeing that Facebook content unsolicited. But I love that comparison that you made between those opening 3 seconds kind of being like your thumbnail on Facebook. I think that's so accurate. Kind of shifting gears here, but I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit more about your pitching process when you're pitching a video out to a niche website, and what that looks like, if that process is different coming in as a brand versus an individual content creator.
Well, it is a challenge. It's actually even more of a challenge, I have found, as an independent content creator. Getting brands to cover your content takes time and trust. If you are starting out as an independent content creator and you don't have, or a very small channel with maybe not necessarily brand recognition, that is the hardest part, is to get that, when I say brand to cover you, like a news source to cover your video. But my best advice is always give up everything. If you're trying to get that attention and get started, give up everything in terms of offer them to get some level of exclusive with the video so that they can get the unlisted video and embed it on a website. Offer them exclusive photos. You know, if you're in the field doing something interesting, take pictures of it, even if it's with your phone, because people like seeing that quote unquote behind the scenes action, or an angle that you may not have captured with your camera. So, you know, offer them these exclusive assets and give them a deadline. Hey, listen, we're trying to nail this in the next 24 to 48 hours. We'd love to hear back from you. So that way they have an understanding of, yeah, you got to make moves here. And also, they're not the only game in town. But that is actually a very secret sauce type of thing that I'm hesitant to give out too much information, but we're all people, and building relationships with people is critical. And if you're going to niche down, get to know the players in the space, follow them on Twitter, connect with them on LinkedIn, be part of their conversations on social media, so that when you do appear out of the ether via email, like, hey, Sam, hey, Sally, you know, I've got this video that I think your audience is really going to enjoy. Here's the pitch on it. Feel free to watch it. Let me know what you think, or something, and build up that human relationship. That's the best way you can do that, regardless of size of the brand you're working for.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. Like, you know, when you're in a position where you don't have a lot of leverage or a lot of relationships yet, really doing anything you can to build those connections up front is going to pay huge dividends later on. Pivoting back to the data for a second, do you feel like you ever enter data paralysis when you're looking at this data for your own content or for AARP's content? Like, how do you analyze the data when you get it and not let it inform every creative decision you make? Because there's this fine line between, you might see something in the data that's really fascinating and you might think you know why people are dropping off, for instance, on a video, but it may actually be kind of unrelated to the data, or there might just be like a causal relationship that doesn't add up. Do you ever feel like you enter data paralysis? And if so, how do you kind of try and avoid that?
That's a great point, Andrew, because in the end, we're making these videos for people, not for computers. It's just that the computers kind of have to serve it up. I don't feel ever data paralysis, mainly because I'm weird and I really like data and the alignment it has in storytelling. I think that what is one of the biggest, if you're working with a team, I think it's really important to have other members of your team who are not super data driven people, and people who are the complete visual creatives that you really need to lean on, because those are the people, if you can give them those boundaries, those like bumpers, they can really flourish in creating within those bumpers. So that's kind of, getting every single person in the weeds with the data. If it's not your passion or experience or profession, it can be overwhelming. It can be paralyzing, because you're looking at this and you can start overthinking things. And what it really does is it takes time. This is not stuff that I came to overnight. This has been years of making. The very first YouTube video I uploaded was in 2008, I think, maybe even earlier. And so I've been making videos and looking at the data for over a decade now on that particular platform. Facebook, a little bit shorter. I think professionally, the first video I put up on Facebook was maybe 2010. 2009 or something. But that being said, it takes time to kind of come to grasp with what these numbers either mean or what we think they mean. So I would say give it time. If you are looking at the content and you really don't get it, or if you're looking at the numbers and you really don't get it, let it marinate. Don't stop looking at it. Put it away for a few days, come back to it, and you could see a piece of information in a way that you had not really thought about. But also have other people to lean on that are not living in that spreadsheet world, because it can be very quickly over analytical about things. And I'm guilty of that for sure. And I'm sure other people on my team and people I work with feel that way, or have run into that, where they'll say, oh, we should do this. And I'll be like, oh, well, the data doesn't say that, but that's not what's important. It's the people. So we can't let data drive everything. But if we ignore the data, we're destined for failure. People have a lot of opinions on Mr. Beast out there. He's one of the top YouTubers on the planet, and he is probably one of the most fascinating people I've ever heard talk about data and video. He's somebody who's been making videos for a very long time on YouTube and with no money, and now has a stupid amount of money to throw at content and everything. And he got there not because he had any kind of backing. He got there because he was just iteratively looking at things and making pivots. So paralysis is real. Give yourself that space and talk to others. And honestly, there is such a rich community of people on the internet through Twitter, Reddit, where you can talk to people about this stuff who are maybe going through it in a very similar fashion with their own brands, and people can talk very frankly, or even share data and kind of go through this together. So you're not alone. Everybody's trying to crack this nut every single day, and it's not getting any smaller. So I think that we need to rely on other people and not too much on the data.
Cool. I think we have time for just one more question. So I'll end the questions on this. A lot of times when you hear people talk about YouTube, they're referring to sort of a one-person band, kind of filming themselves, being personality driven. Think of, all the folks that would attend VidCon. But you also are creating content at AARP that goes on YouTube. And I've seen the documentary content that you and your fellow producers there make, and they're very high quality, very sophisticated. I'm just curious, is there any sort of lessons learned from the more complicated, more sophisticated projects like a documentary that we can glean as we create content that may ultimately live on YouTube?
Yeah, absolutely. In the end, again, it comes down to audience expectations and building that level of relationship with the audience. So if you're a channel that has a body of work that is like those type of documentaries, if you want to continue to grow down that vertical, you're encouraged to make that type of content, because your audience's expectation is that that's what you've been making. But if you have decided that I want to do cooking videos now, that's fine, but you're going to lose subscribers, and there's going to be a very hard transition point for a while to transition your audience either in that direction or build a new audience. So I know I've brought up independent content creators and other people have too, but if you look at some of the largest, the number one YouTube channel on the planet now is T-Series, and that's not by accident. I mean, yes, it's music, which is also a very good niche on YouTube, but that's not by accident. Their YouTube strategy is some of the best in the world, putting out videos constantly. Their thumbnails are amazing. Their titles are intriguing. It's not just the song title. So they're a bit of an extreme because they are such a massive organization now. But there was actually several years where Vice and Vox ruled YouTube. Their videos were always the top videos, and they were not by individuals. They were by larger organizations. So there are a lot of great examples out there to look at of organizations doing a good job of YouTube storytelling that are not independent content creators. And I would look to them and build up, even if it's create a YouTube account where you're just an R&D account where you're following other like-kind brands and looking at that every day, and you'll start to see how they evolve their content strategy to meet viewer expectations.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for today's webinar. To everyone who joined us, thank you for stopping by. We hope you guys had fun and learned a couple things along the way. And be on the lookout for the next webinar we have featuring Kate Braddock, CEO of Women 2.0, Katie Donovan, co-founder of She Is, and Ellen Hyslop, co-founder at The Gist. We're going to be chatting about content that delivers value and caters to your niche with tons of hands-on takeaways. So we hope to see you guys there. And don't forget to check out greenbuzzagency.com/blog to see the on-demand recordings of any of our previous episodes, including this one. Finally, an enormous thank you to TJ for joining us today. Thanks everyone else for joining, and we hope to see you guys next week.